Hello, beautiful people. You are listening to the Communal Table podcast, part of Food and Wine Pro. I'm your host, Kat Kinsman, and my guest today is the lovely, lovely Antoni Porowski, who you know from Queer Eye. You're about to know for this gorgeous cookbook that he has written. For those of you who are listening, rather than seeing Antoni in the kitchen, it is a stunning thing. Welcome.
Thank you. That means so much coming from you. Did you know, well, you did know this because you were there, my very first sort of like video content food thing was with you.
That was the first one?
Way back when.
Oh my God. I assumed that you had done that.
No, that was my first, and I didn't know what the hell I was doing.
You did a beautiful.
And you were like the perfect, you came up and you were like my maternal figure there, and you took care of me and you told me to calm down, and you saw that I was anxious.
Can we
think,
like lock pinkies over anxiety?
Yes.
Oh man. You breathed through it and you got through it like a champ.
I'm doing my best.
Yeah. But I mean, on that day, I remember like, I just remember I looked at you and I know, I recognize the look on your face because I know that it's been one that has been on mine before where you're just trying to muscle through, but the eyes.
You just want to be perfect.
God, yeah. And it's so scary, this expectation of perfection.
Terrifying. Self-imposed, might I add.
Oh, dear God, yes.
Yeah.
So it's been, and was that 2014 maybe?
It was.
Or 2015?
That long ago?
No, it might have been
Something like
2015,
that.
something like that. So just to backtrack a little bit on this, so my boss at the time said, oh, I met this man or this boy, this lovely fellow or whatever.
Man-child, as I like to refer to myself.
Yeah. Who, maybe we could do some food videos with him. I was impressed by, I think you had cooked something at a dinner party.
Yes.
And you came in and I thought like, oh, it's just going to be somebody pretty. It's just going to be whatever. And I remember you walked in and I thought like, he's disturbingly pretty. I wonder if he has anything to say. And I prejudged you. And I feel really bad about that. But we started to talk and the passion with which you spoke about food, and you kept using the word proper. And I loved that. And I realized like, oh my God, you really had this tremendous point of view and you cared so deeply about this. And I was just like, on board.
You mentioned that too. You were like, I don't know where your life is headed or where your interests lie, but you need to remember, like, focus on that word proper and how much meaning it has to you. And
I've heard you deploy that.
I have. Sometimes organically, sometimes it's a little forced, and it sort of serves as a reminder about what my sort of food mantra is. And yeah.
And some things have happened in your life.
Just a few.
Since then.
A sprinkling, if you will.
So we did a couple of videos that day, and I remember like, I think we did 2 different sessions maybe during that. And then I think I sent you a part of my book saying like, okay, if you were worried at all about anxiety or whatever, here's where I am on this. And my book wasn't even out yet. And I think I sent you the thing of that. And then fast forward a couple of years ago, there's all of a sudden I see a press release with your name in it that you're on Queer Eye.
Yeah.
So what happened in between?
So at the time when I met you, I was working for Ted Allen.
Yes.
So the OG food and wine expert.
He's coming on soon.
Really?
Yes, he's coming on the podcast.
Aww.
I'm so psyched.
I'm going to come sit here and like creep on the sides and just...
You are welcome to creep any damn time you want.
He's one of the most intelligent, curious people I know who just has an incredible passion for food. And
he's a journalist,
He's a journalist. I love a journalist.
Yeah, I have always appreciated that about him because I had watched, Queer Eye first version of that.
As did I with my sisters, usually like hiding because I didn't want to like admit that I was watching it, and I like wasn't. It was bringing up some feelings that I wasn't ready to address yet.
Right.
So I would watch it, but yeah, since then, a lot has changed. I was working for Ted at the time, and then also working for his husband, who has a wonderful furniture gallery in Brooklyn called Full Circle Modern, and they do like 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, mostly American, but a lot of Italian furniture designers as well. And so as I was working with Ted, sort of like planning his schedule, helping with all like the assistant things and a little bit of food in the kitchen and like helping with like dinner parties, and he would host like annual chopped barbecues for like production and all the chefs on that show. So I would cook alongside them, which was like terrifying and super intimidating, but I learned so much.
What a great crash course in seeing how to do that, how to talk while making. And
totally.
And at the same time, I remember you had to go out of the country to film for a while.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, you were, and you were filming
yes.
something in Polish, I believe.
In Polish and in Russian.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was a short docudrama called Ojcu, which actually was, we received some kind of an acknowledgement at Cannes the following year.
wow.
And it was basically about Katyń, about basically before World War II, when all of Catholic Poles were basically like lined up, and it was basically like a genocide that no one really
geez.
talks about as much. And I went and I played this guy who actually lived and was taken away from his family in the middle of the night. And yeah, it was, wow, that's crazy. I can't believe.
Because we were trying to schedule these videos.
Yes.
And I remember you saying, well, I'm going to be gone during this month or something. And I was thinking, like,
Right.
oh my God, because, you're a working actor.
Yeah, sometimes I was, and other times I wasn't.
Such as being a working actor.
But exactly. But I always had like all these different things going on. I was also, at the time, I was a waiter at Bond Street at a sushi
Oh, you
restaurant.
were? Oh, I didn't. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
And,
I knew you had worked in restaurants, but I didn't know it was that one.
And then I knew that I wanted to have a bit more of a fixed schedule that wasn't all over the place. Yet whenever I had that fixed schedule, I wanted to be all over the place. It was always a sort of like never happy with where I was.
You're an artist.
I guess. Yeah. I guess that's what it is.
Yeah.
And so I started working a little more for Barry, Ted's husband, on the furniture side. And then a gallery owner in the city basically found me and offered me an incredible job where I wouldn't have to do anything else. And I thought I was trying to like fight against like, okay, maybe I'm not an artist and I can like work in a gallery and this is going to be easier and I'm going to have a 10 to 6 job and this is how I'm going to be happy. And I tried.
Yep.
It was a valiant effort, unsuccessful, but valiant. And so I worked for him at a place called High Style Deco for about a year and a half. And then the audition process started for Queer Eye.
So how did you know? Did Ted say like, "Hey, I really think you should do this," or did you start it separate from him?
It started separate from him. A friend of mine, manager Jameson, who works for Jason Weinberg, contacted me and basically told me, he was like, so Queer Eye is being rebooted for Netflix. They want a diverse cast. The concept, the tagline that they had was turning the red states pink. Which I loved, and I was like, okay,
very charmed.
I'm intrigued, but also like it was like immediate fear because it was two things, which, I mentioned briefly in the introduction, but the two things that were the most intimate and sacred to me, and that was my sexual orientation and food. Even though I did those videos with you, like it wasn't something that I did it because I felt like I needed to, but I was kind of too afraid, and food was something that was intimate, and so was my sexuality. And this was a show that showcased both of those things with a massive spotlight. It's like literally the focus of the show.
And I mean, the thing with you and food, that conversation that we had in this room where I was sort of, interviewing you about doing these videos, it just lit you up. You talking about food and cooking and entertaining in a very particular way. It was this thing that was it was this particular like streak of magnet that was running through you, and like the second those words were said, like you just grabbed that because it seemed like that was your comfort place, and you wouldn't be able to hide that.
I know. I've always been like that. I was like that since I was a little kid. It's with the life that I have now, I get to see like my family members even less than I did before. And so when I do, everything always ties in around it. It always starts with like, wow, your life is so crazy. And my answer is usually like, yeah, how random and weird that I ended up on a show like this. And like my cousin Maya, who we grew up like 5 houses away from each other. And I was telling her like, yeah, how random that I got Queer Eye. And she's like, no, it makes perfect sense. Like you were 7 and we would be on the bus and you'd be sitting there with your lunchbox, like bragging about like this like beautiful food that your mother made or like leftovers from the night before, and you would talk about how she prepared like the string beans, but you were saying that she shouldn't have boiled them, that she should have roasted them instead. And I had these like weird, strange, like very specific opinions. I don't even know like where they were coming from. Like I always loved talking about food. I could be eating a meal and talking about the next one.
Yeah. I mean, it's so this intro to your book it's so beautiful because you talk about something very upfront that I think about a lot and feel a lot, which is imposter syndrome. And you talked in there about not being gay enough or the right kind of gay and not being the right kind of food person. So you're walking into a situation of this, you're maybe into the structure of it if you're doing auditions or you're doing whatever. Talk to me about your emotional state when you walk in the room.
Oh gosh. Yeah, I remember landing in LA. It was my first time there. And we basically get into a room. There's always debate among my castmates. Our first theory was that there were 500 of us. And then when we started speaking to some of the execs, they were like, no, there were like 50 or 60 of you. And we had this meet and greet the night before, which was like a cocktail party where we all got to know each other and there were no cameras. And we were all sort of like asked to socialize and get to know each other. And we had little numbers with our category, so people knew who was in which category.
So go out there and take out the other food people.
Exactly.
Did you recognize other food people?
I did not. A lot of them were West Coast based, but there were a few from all over, really. And some were private caterers, private chefs. There were some like full on, chef de cuisine types from like restaurants. And so it was an eclectic mix. And I know that the food category and I believe the culture category had the most.
Okay.
So there were a lot of us. I was like, great, no pressure. And what I told myself was going in there, I actually had, I had a long walk. One of my closest friends, Klaus, who's also a mentor of mine, he was telling me before I went in for the audition process, he was like, you have one goal during this whole thing. And he's like, you have to stay cool. Because I would talk to him about auditions all the time and how I would go in and try to be someone. And it was basically always like, I need you to want me. He was like, that's the opposite of what you should be doing. The only thing that you can do is go in and 100% be yourself. Because whether you get it or not has nothing to do with you. The only thing that you can control is sort of like your state of being and your state of mind. And because it's an unscripted / reality show, you have to present yourself as you like authentically are, which is kind of what we encourage our heroes to do on the show as well.
Right.
He's like, if you let your nerves get the best of you, you're going to make people in the room uncomfortable. And that's not what they want to see. They want to see somebody who's comfortable with themselves. And I am none of that in most of the time. So still trying to figure it out.
Oh, you and me both.
So I knew that I had to kind of like be relaxed. And so I treated everything as sort of like a fun game. And so I went in, I socialized, and I can be like at the center of the room and be like a total alpha extrovert. But if you get me the next day, I will be a complete introvert and I want to hide in the corner by like the cheese and charcuterie board and just be like totally shaky and overly caffeinated and not being able to interact with a single person.
The ambiverts. I am an ambivert.
Totally.
So I charge my battery talking to other people and enthusiasm and all that kind of stuff. And then I crash really hard and need to be at home alone or just with my husband or my dogs or something like that and not talk to anyone.
Yeah.
And just kind of go and hide. But it takes that to be able to like fully do the
and
thing.
I can't decide which Antoni is going to, like which one I'm going to be when I wake up in the morning. And I just have to sort of like deal with it as it comes. I was in a social mood. So that was nice. I got to know a bunch of people, took as many names down as I could.
You flip the switch at will?
I can't. I just happen to be in like my extroverted mood. So that that worked well for me. And then so we had our first day. We had this fishbowl situation, and because of my name, I was actually the first one to go.
God, no pressure.
And so at each table, there were 4 stations, and there was an executive from Netflix, from ITV, who's producing it, and from Scout. They're like the OG show creators. David Collins, Michael Williams, Rob Eric, and Joel Chiotti. And so you literally just pick out a question out of a literal fishbowl and then just answer it and just kind of like ramble on.
Do you remember any of your questions?
I don't.
Is this whole thing just like wiped from your memory?
I think one of them was about Mofongo because they were like, what's a recent trip that you took? And I talked about going to Puerto Rico with Klaus, actually, who has a farm in El Yunque in the rainforest, or used to before the hurricane. And I talked about how when I tried mofongo for the first time, it wasn't good and I was disappointed and I knew that it could be better. And then I went and I tried it again and I realized that you can't just have unripe plantains, that they have to be sweet as well, because then it's just too dry. And when it gets really crispy and you get that nice tomato sauce with like big shrimp, it's just delicious.
I'm going to have mofongo tonight.
I love mofongo.
There's a place right down the street from me that has it.
It's so good. And that tomato sauce too. Anyway, so I just started rambling about food and I noticed that they sort of like the heads cocked a little, and I got a lot more attention when I talked about that.
See, because
so I was like,
like
like what you were touching on, and it was like, okay, that's my thing. I need to not to manipulate the situation, but like I'm here for food and I have to show what my passion is. And it's sort of like know what your strengths are. And although I feel like I'm pretty knowledgeable about food, I've always been very curious about it. I've been watching Julia Child and Jacques Pepin since I was a child, along with Care Bears on Saturday morning cartoons. Like they went hand in hand. And I've read a lot about, I've read a lot of cookbooks and a lot of like food writers, and I've always loved it, but I'm not like a classically trained chef. I didn't go to culinary school. And so that was something that kind of followed me. And I was even talking to Ted Allen about it before. And I was like, well, I'm not Ted. Like, I'm not a chef. I know how to cook. I'm comfortable in a kitchen. But his point was basically, he was like, you're not a chef and you shouldn't want to be one. While like, he's like, just see it this way. Like chefs they work back of the house. They often are like, they're sort of, and this is a generalization, but like they also often have their strong opinions. They're not people who are like used to teaching others. They have like their way of doing it. Just see yourself as sort of like somewhere in between where you're passionate about the food and you've worked front of house as a waiter for over 10 years. And just see yourself as kind of like a messenger of that information and just like let your passion like drive it and just talk about food. Anyone just needs to hear you talk about food and they'll know that you're not an idiot.
Well, and also if you're dealing with your heroes, they're coming in there, they have to be so vulnerable. I can't even imagine what it takes to get up there and say like, hey, fix my life in this particular way.
To 5 complete strangers.
Yeah, that's so much. And so I know that in that first season, people were saying about like simple recipes. I'm like, what do you think they need to be learning right now? They're trying to revamp their entire lives. You don't want to teach them how to necessarily like, make a whole like, I'm trying to think like, coq au vin or something like that.
But it has to be something,
if they poured cereal.
They have to be able to replicate it. And my point is like in a week and in a 2-minute scene, literally, you're not gonna, I want the seed to be planted. Like that's what's important. And what I noticed really early on, I feel like we're going on so many tangents. And I don't even know if I'm answering your questions, but you know, here we are.
This is what this is.
I realize that there are 2 types of people on Queer Eye. There are people who used to be passionate about food and then something happened and they stopped, like Neil Reddy in season 1.
Oh yeah.
I think Saving Sasquatch was the name of the episode. And he had all these like relics of like kitchen appliances and he used to cook so much and he stopped. And he was dealing with a lot of his own issues and depression, which he talks about openly. And
good God, yeah, depression can just completely take the passion that you have and just squash it. And
it doesn't matter how strong it is; it can totally squash it.
Yeah.
And then you had other people like Corey, the cop, who thought he was vegan, but he was eating protein bars with whey protein, which is like cow. Yeah. And so I had to have a little sit down with him and be like, so you're not fully vegan.
Sorry to give you an identity
crisis.
Sorry,
exactly. And then with him, he was very intimidated and scared by his kitchen, but also a religious man for whom Sunday dinners with his family are like integral to that culture. Massive cross in his dining room, but he was eating in his basement and his wife and his daughters were eating upstairs.
Right. Yeah.
So he didn't care about cooking per se. But with him, it was more the reason. Like, look, you want to connect with your wife and your daughters, prepare a meal for them. And that's what got his butt in the kitchen and got him excited to actually make something.
Yeah.
So it's 2 schools of thought. For one person, it's like you need a reason for it. And with other people, like it's already there. I'm almost even more interested. I've sort of changed my tune. And it's the people who supposedly, I use this in quotes, don't give a shit about cooking. Because then you realize that it's like if you give them a reason for it, if you have somebody that you want to say I love you to, or I'm sorry, or just like be of service to, whether it's your community or significant other, like you can spark that in literally anyone.
I mean, we all eat. We all have to eat. And as I've realized as a food journalist, you can connect with anybody about food. They, like you said, they might not think that they care. They might just think of food as maintenance, but they have some primal memory.
Talk to them about their grandma for a second.
Yeah. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing.
Whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. But like, there's always that version. Even if it was a really bad pumpkin pie, like it doesn't matter. Like we all have that memory.
Oh God, yeah. Immediately I went to my grandmother trying to serve me a spaghetti sauce that had mold on top of it.
Stop.
Oh, it was, yeah.
Was the sauce out of a jar?
Probably. Yeah, but even with that, the sauce being out of a jar, like it connected to an emotional place because my grandfather was, first generation American. He didn't want to smell Italian because he was so bullied by that he never learned how to cook the things. So my mother didn't learn how to cook the things. So they always just had jarred sauce in the house.
Oh God.
Yeah, so we all have those things.
Yeah.
So I'm just thinking, like, you're so empathetic with the people on the show and stuff. At the same time, seeing, I've had friends who, like, when I've met them, have been well known, famous, all this kind of stuff. I don't know if I'd seen anybody who I'd sort of known a little bit before become very famous. And I want to talk about taking care of yourself during that transition and how you
Okay.
do that. And does food play a role in that?
Absolutely.
I remember as soon as the press release came out, I sent you a note and I was like, oh my God, and make sure you take care of yourself
Yeah,
in
that
the
was
midst of all of this.
that was the first thing that you said. It was congratulations followed by that.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, nobody can really prepare you for it.
Yeah.
I don't think that there are any guidebooks on how to navigate these. They still feel like new waters,
Yeah.
even though it's been like, what, 2 years about?
Yeah.
It's an ongoing thing. I think touching on my relationship with food, it's like it's happy and it's sad. It's like if I look at my life before when I was working in the gallery, the relationship I was in at the time with Joey, the tradition was I came home, I would go to the grocery store, get food for the day, and I would have a meal ready for him when he came home.
Oh.
And like that was every night of the week.
Yeah.
And then on weekends, we would go out maybe like one night, but I always cooked at home. I loved going to restaurants to sort of research, but cooking at home was like our favorite thing. And my life now, 2 years into this, single, an apartment that I've had for about 8 months that I've probably spent almost 2 months in because I'm traveling all the time. Don't feel sorry for me. Life is really great.
Yeah,
but it's still
it's
like
hard. It's hard.
I don't
traveling.
have as many opportunities to cook for myself or someone to cook for. And it's the irony is like I'm this food guy now, but I'm not cooking for myself as much as I used to.
And I imagine also it's hard to go to restaurants.
It's hard and awesome.
Okay, unpack that for me, please.
It's hard when I have days when I'm experiencing a particular level of anxiety. And for some reason, when I'm experiencing a lot of anxiety, that's when I seem to get noticed the most, as the universe would have it. I have a system that I develop. Like I don't sit on the banquette anymore. I sit on the chair facing the wall, and I love looking at people. I love watching the way a restaurant is run. Like, oh, there's the bread station, the espresso bars here. That's interesting. Usually, like when I was a busboy, they had both of those together, and the same person who did the bread did the espresso. And I used to like observe all these things, and I love people watching. I can't really do that anymore because as soon as you lock eyes with someone, they see you, the phone's out and they're walking towards you with a smile. And it's like, so it's hard to sort of, and also I'm very ADHD.
I just got diagnosed in August.
Oh, congrats.
Yeah.
I don't know if
it's
congratulations,
great.
but it is what it is, right? But
it actually made so much sense to me, and it meant I could finally get medication and treatment for it.
Oh.
But I'd been feeling so bad about myself for such a long time, thinking like, oh, you scatterbrain, you whatever, and realizing like, oh no,
there's a name for this.
Yeah.
It's kind of nice, isn't it?
It's really good to have that name. It makes some things difficult. We went to a Russian restaurant in Brighton Beach the other night, and there was so much happening in a show going on, and my ADHD was on full flower.
Oh, see, sometimes that's perfect for me because I get easily distracted, and it just kind of like lets me just do my own thing. But what's nice about it is that now I do get distracted very easily, but now when I'm at restaurants, since I can no longer sort of like look around everywhere and have like a buzzing eye, it forces me to sort of hyper-focus on the person I'm with and just to give them my full attention, which is really nice because I've always, like small talk for me at a cocktail party is the worst. Like I cannot talk about the weather and I'm much more into like intimate dinner parties where I get to have like a meaningful conversation and I leave thinking something or like thinking about the person. And I feel like I've either made a new friendship or like reinforced one or just hung out with like old friends that I haven't seen in a while. So that part is sort of like, it comes with its pros and its cons, but I eat a lot more at restaurants now because I get a lot more dishes than I used to.
Yeah. I mean, that navigating, because they'll send things out. And
I also like feel bad because I feel like I have to eat everything because I hate being wasteful.
I
know,
get
but
it bagged at the end. No, that's the thing. Like,
no, that's what I started doing.
Yeah, and then give it to a homeless person.
Yes.
I mean, some stuff I'll take home and I'll eat it the next day.
Someone in Philly got a beautiful branzino 2 nights ago with braised fennel and these like a beautiful whole head of like charred romaine.
Oh, yeah.
I really hope they enjoyed it.
And yes, and so the thing is, like, I realized what I learned. I'd sort of asked a couple like homeless activists and stuff. They said put it like sort of on the top edge of the trash can if nobody's right there.
Oh, I always
so
find
it's
a
like
person.
unsullied.
Right.
Yeah, it's just sometimes you can, sometimes you can't.
It's the first time I hear a reference of unsullied not pertaining to Game of Thrones. So I really appreciate that.
I've never seen Game of Thrones.
Really?
I know.
I just got into it. But anyway, that's for another sesh.
But yeah, it's one of those things where I've realized just for a matter of survival, you can't eat all the
No.
because it will break you, body, mind, spirit, and
Totally.
it's done out of love. Like you feed people because you love them and you care about them,
Yeah.
and because words don't always come easily for things. It's easier to be like, hey, I made this thing for you.
Absolutely. And so, so that part is a little tricky. But then even with like eating in general, my relationship with food has definitely, we've had our I was going to say conversations, but basically monologues or conversations with myself where now I'm on TV. I get my photograph taken a lot. You see yourself sometimes when it's like, oh, they put too much makeup, they put too little makeup. Suddenly I'm looking at like, oh, there's like an extra chin that's in this angle. So I have to like, there's so much more self-awareness that comes from it. And part of that is like vanity. There has been a spotlight on my vanity. And so I made a decision about a year ago. I am like a dairy freak. I love dairy, even though I've been lactose intolerant my whole life, just still fighting it.
You're just got the lactate on you.
Not even. I feel like I got it out of my system. And this isn't advice for people because I don't feel like this is the right approach to take, but I was severely lactose intolerant as a kid and I just kept on eating cheese and I feel like I fought my way through it.
I'm proud of you.
And maybe it's just me, and I don't think other people should do that, but it worked for me. And I decided to, I started doing like intermittent fasting and working out more. And I've always been a very active person. If I don't work out, I don't sleep well. And it allows me to show up in a better, like if I show up first thing in the morning, it's like my cup of coffee. It's just a necessity for me to keep going. But I like cut out dairy out of my diet, and I was like, I'm only gonna have dairy on weekends, and I'm not gonna like say no to butter or be like super vigilant about it, but just have a conscious effort of not having a vat of mac and cheese on a Tuesday for lunch or a cacio e pepe on a Wednesday.
That sounds really good though right now.
It does. I love a vat of mac and cheese. Paige X and Antoni in the kitchen. 2 types of mac and cheese.
I actually just wrote on a trend sheet today that I think that a bounty of mac and cheese in 2020, just all different varieties, are going to be
I love mac and cheese.
It's a fantastic thing, and it's something where I have all these dietary restrictions and stuff, so I can't really do it. So I'll have like a tiny little bite.
Wet or baked?
Baked, and well, actually both, but with the baked with the crunchiness on top. God,
what's better than that?
There's really very little. I am thinking like I love it more than some family members, probably. But you're not necessarily getting to cook for yourself as much. So when you're traveling, I know you go to different cities, and then are you in a fixed place where you have a kitchen where you can tend to your needs?
Yes.
Okay, that's a
something
stabilizing?
that's super important. It's important for me just to have a sense of home. Like one of my castmates, so Tan, who's a fashion expert on the show, when he goes to a new city, he's always like he's a minimalist. He doesn't bring too many things because he wants to be reminded of where his home is, and that's in Salt Lake City with his husband.
Yeah.
I am not that person.
I'm a maximalist.
I'm a little bit more of like, I'm a maximalist and also a little more nomadic in that sense, where it's like home is wherever I am. So at first the first season I tried to like fill it up with as many things as possible, and I just filled it up with a shit ton of trees. I went to IKEA with like 2 SUVs and we filled it up with trees, and I filled it with a shocking amount. So it was like a greenhouse in there. And I had Transformers, G.I. Joe, and Star Wars figurines because I was like, I wanted to just be a kid again, and I wanted it to be a fun place. So I just had toys everywhere.
That's lovely.
Kind of lovely to me and maybe creepy to some. But that's how I wanted to make my home. And then I needed to make sure that I have to have my pots and my pans and my things just to. Atlanta was different because we worked so hard and we were there a lot more often. We weren't flying in and out as much, and the hours were a lot longer. It wasn't a well-oiled machine yet. It was very much the wild, wild west. Kansas City was different. The apartments got a little bigger.
That loft was beautiful.
A little nicer. The
with
loft
the
was
dog.
Yes, a little brutally. But our apartment there, mine there had to be fitted with all of the kitchen things that I had here in New York because I decided that it was a great idea to decide to write a cookbook in the middle of 2 seasons.
Okay,
Because
right.
I'm that guy.
Writing books is such an act of masochism.
Mm-hmm.
It's and especially I've not yet written a cookbook, and it would never be my cookbook. I would always just do it with somebody. But it is a brutal thing to do. I think everybody thinks, oh, I should write a cookbook. Let's dissuade people from that.
And I was thinking like, okay, maybe we'll do like 50 recipes. And then my brilliant editor, Rux Martin.
Rux Martin is like the patron saint.
I
of
call her
so
the
many-
Grace Coddington of the culinary
I
world.
saw that in your intro. That's so.
Oh, right. It
dead
is in the
on.
intro.
Yeah.
I'm very proud of that
For
one.
people who don't know who Rux Martin is, she has edited so many of the greats, and like she's responsible for so many staple cookbooks that are out there on people's shelves that they cook from every day, and they have no idea.
And she's brilliant. I know
Yeah.
she's an editor. This is redundant, but she's brilliant at editing. It's like remove, take away, more. Like we don't need this. Keep it simple. Don't overcomplicate it. Know that this isn't a book just for your friends, but like we want people across the country to be able to cook from this. And I had so much help along the way. Like Mindy Fox, my co-author on the book, who is an angel. She was on the East Coast while I was in Kansas City, Missouri. And I would basically show up at home at the end of like a 10, 12-hour day of filming. And I befriended, she was our caterer on seasons 3 and 4, Beth Barden, awesome boss restaurateur of a great brunch spot called Succotash. She would be waiting at my home. She would cook 2 to 3 recipes. Then I would cook 2 to 3 recipes. So I would try 6 dishes like every single night.
Wow.
And we'd be eating until 1 or 2 in the morning. And then Mindy would be retesting or trying her own set of like recipes on the East Coast. And then we would have phone time to sort of discuss like introductions to every single dish. And it was like, I had so many women around me, which is the best because I love working with women. And it's always like, it's so collaborative.
Yeah.
And it's just it's always made me more comfortable. It is on Queer Eye for the most part. We have like a very female based production team and crew, especially with our executives. And I really wanted it to be the same thing with the cookbook as well.
So talk to me about finding your voice in food, because I'm thinking when I met you, I knew that you had some strong opinions about particular ingredients and the freshness and the properness of it.
Right.
How did you find the food story that you wanted to tell in this book?
At first, we had so many ideas. At first I was thinking, because I've had a really troubled relationship with Polish food growing up. It was something that I loved as a child. I moved to West Virginia and suddenly it wasn't cool to have an immigrant name or bring cabbage rolls for lunch. So I was
You were the kid with the smelly lunch.
I was the kid with the smelly, farty cabbage lunch. That was I. And so I kind of like stepped away from it for a while. And then in more recent years, I started cooking Polish dishes again and sort of like putting my tweaks on them. And instead of putting beer in a hunter stew, I put a bottle of red wine and treated it like a bourguignon instead, and learning how to like render fat on kielbasa so that it's really nice and crispy and you don't have those chunks of like that unpleasant fat. And so that was like one thing. I was like, okay, no, let's do like a Polish book. And then another idea was like, no, well, like what's Queer Eye about? It's about teaching people essentials and like giving them little nuggets. So then there was that part. And it's like, should it be like a very back to basics, sort of like what Ina Garten does so beautifully and just teaching people like what the essentials are? Or the other side was I was raised in Montreal, extremely multicultural and diverse. We had in our elementary school, we had this tradition once a year, maybe twice. It was called the Buffet des Nations, the Buffet of the Nations. And you would bring food from your parents' country of origin, and you would share it with everybody in the lunchroom.
It's lovely.
And it was such an incredible, that experience really shaped me because I would have like my friend Andrew Shahidi, whose mother was Portuguese. His father's Iranian. And he was like a first-generation immigrant raised in Canada. And so like they would bring their food. And my mom would bring, they were naleśniki. So they were like these crepes, but instead of just like with regular button mushrooms, she would put like porcini and morels and do like a nice little cream sauce. And so that was something like I wanted it to be diverse as well. And so then I had a chat with Rux and she was like, we want 100 recipes. And I was like, that is double what I thought it was going to be. And she was like, treat this as an autobiography. Look back at your life and just write down all the frickin' recipes, all the dishes that you've ever had. Just start there. And I wrote it out. and there were like well over 120 or 130. And I realized like, oh, this actually isn't hard because I've never written a single recipe down.
Yeah.
I've never measured a single thing in my life except for baking. Like everything is always like an Antoni handful, which is like a normal person's 2 hands cupped together because I have massive hands. And then I realized that it was like, oh, I'm going to treat this as an autobiography. So there's food of my Polish heritage, dishes that I prepared when I was studying at the neighborhood playhouse in New York, and I was living off of like $50 a week and overdrafting my account and calling my dad and asking him to put money into my TD account. Dishes that I prepared during my wonderful relationship with Joey over 7 years, where I cooked for his family every Sunday, which was like such an important thing that I was lacking, just that semblance of like that unconditional love and family, because my family lives all over the place. And so it was like a mix of all these different things. And also some recipes that didn't make it into Queer Eye that I was really upset about because editing, I understand it's not a cooking show, but I wanted to include those in there as well.
Well, yeah, because do you feel like you had to prove anything to anybody? Because editing did not...
I want to lie and say no, but yes.
Because I watched the first season and I saw people saying like the can he cook debate. And the thing is, I knew you could. And it was almost painful to have that because I knew that you could, and I knew that probably hurt.
It did hurt. I had there was a moment. There was a certain publication that I have long admired and read since I was pretty young. And they put out a piece right when the show came out, and Ted Allen actually texted me the article. I was having sushi with my friend.
The writer is a very good friend of mine.
So
and I texted her a lot of things.
So the first article that came out from said publication put a spotlight on me and made me out to be like the breakout star of the show. And it was basically like a beautiful piece that just like stroked my ego, made me feel like king shit. I felt like $1,000,000. And then I think a week or two later, the same publication, an opinion piece by this writer came and just like brought me down completely. And it was such an important lesson because yes, of course I was hurt by it because I take a lot of care into what it is that I do. And I also have a need for everyone to love me. At that time, I didn't understand how it's like, if I can charm anybody, that was like my MO. And when you're a public figure, that's actually impossible. Not that you should strive to make that possible if you're a private citizen, but it's like actually not possible to make everyone happy. And so that was like the ultimate for me. And I was like, well, if I'm going to read all of like the positive, like jerking me off pieces, I need to read the pieces and accept the ones that aren't doing that and that have strong opinions about certain things.
How do you compartmentalize that?
Well, so I stopped reading everything.
Okay.
And now life is big enough where I have a publicist who sends me like a doc of things when they're really important and they want me to read it so that I'm aware I do. But I think it's very careful restraint. It's like the day that I decided to get off of Facebook. And it was sort of like, oh, how am I going to deal with not doing this? But there was a certain freedom in not engaging in that all the time. Like I know public people who have Google notifications for their name whenever something comes out. I could not live that way. It would drive me completely insane. If you get me on a sensitive day and somebody writes something shitty about me, I will be destroyed. And I've gotten a lot better at it. And pieces come out all the time, and it's like we're doing all these different things, and people have their opinions, and I'm much less affected by it than I was. But at the time, like it really hurt. The thing that hurt the most is when my personality gets attacked, because that's something that's really me.
I mean, it's such a strange thing that I always wonder about. You're an idea to a lot of people rather than a person.
Right, you're a concept.
Yes, and they can project anything they want. They can decide, oh, I walked past him on the street and he looked kind of funny at me. He must be a dick or something. Not that I've seen anybody write that, but you become something that is an avatar of yourself out into the world. How do you reconcile having to have that person out in the world and still keep something for yourself?
See, okay, that is such a good question because I experienced that on the show as well. I think when the first season came out, I was arguably the most guarded, where I didn't share a lot about myself. Some of my other castmates are very comfortable sharing about their personal stories and their journeys and the things that they've gone through in life. And with me, I sort of I give like a tiny little crumb and I just kind of keep it really vague in general, and I let people kind of like do with that whatever they will. But as the show sort of like evolved, we had an episode, even in the 4th episode of the first season, with AJ, who was coming out to his stepmom.
That was, oh God, I cried so.
Who was, me too. And we're sitting there in this changing room, and I didn't think that this was going to be a thing where I was going to talk about what it was like to be fluid, but he started sharing about his experience. And then I was like, if I'm going to sit here with a perfect stranger and ask him intimate details about his life, like, how can I not do the same for me? Like, you have to, it's a two-way, it's a conversation. I don't want to be that person who's just drilling in and asking questions and trying to get like great content to make an awesome show.
Yes.
You have to share your personal story as well, or at least I felt that way. So I've started doing that more. And as the season sort of like progressed, there are little tidbits that sort of offer insight into a very complicated relationship that I have with my biological mother. In an episode of season 3, I very lightly touched on addiction and the fact that I have an intimate understanding of what that is. I always think like, when I don't want to share about something, I always think like, but if I do, then somebody's going to be able to relate. And the way that I think about my problems these days, or I take into account that there are people there who need to feel like they're not the only ones going through something. And that's what I feel our responsibility is on the show. Because I remember so many times in my life when I thought that I was terminally unique, that I was alone with my anxiety until you sent me your book. I was the only person who understood what it was like to feel lonely and understand the struggles of like addiction and dependency. And codependence in relationships for that matter. But the more that you communicate and share with other people, the more you realize you're not alone. So I kind of see it as my job, and there's this bigger picture where I am meant to share these things. But at the same time, once you share it, it's out there. And then there's less of it that's for you. So it's a real catch-22.
It really, I remember when I started writing about mental illness when I worked at CNN, and it was the scariest thing. I still refer to it as like a coming out as mentally ill. And it was the scariest thing I had done. But then the wave that comes back of people saying like, oh my God, me too, is astonishing. But then you can't heal the world, and then you feel guilty that you're not doing enough.
Everyone wants advice then. So it's very tricky because like you can't really control what that reaction is going to be. And it's like, well, I gave you this and it already took so, like, you want people to understand, I'm speaking for us, but I'm speaking for me, but it's like, I want to share this part of me because I want you to know that like other people are going through this, but like, I can't give you everything. You have to let me have a little bit of it for myself. And that's hard.
And does that make meeting new people difficult too? If you, like at this phase, when you meet somebody new and they think they know you, does that happen?
Oh yeah. People respond in all kinds of different ways. I have a lot of friends of mine who are like very successful, famous actors. And the interaction with them, I feel like I'm very sensitive to this and I notice it. And people always have some kind of, there is a little bit of a barrier because they're like, oh, that character that you played. They don't know about their personal lives. When they meet me, a lot of times they think like, oh no, I know you, Antoni, like for who you are.
Because you play yourself.
They immediately get a more caffeinated version of myself, but yes, myself. And people immediately get sort of like touchy. And I'm like a very affectionate person, but at the same time, when a perfect stranger comes and puts their hand on your waist or on your shoulder, and it's sort of like, and they don't mean anything negative by it. There's nothing like aggressive in their intention, but the way that it comes across to me sometimes is just kind of like, I need a moment to sort of like calibrate and tell myself like, oh, they've seen me share some shit on the show. This is like they're seeing me IRL right now. This is kind of like a unicorn moment for them, and I have to like address that. And even if I look terrified, just smile, ask them a question, and just like have a human interaction and be a normal human being. Because there's days where I'm super anxious and I feel very shy, and it's harder for me to engage, where I struggle with that. But at the same time, you have to remember like this is important to them.
That's a really generous way to do
I'm
that.
not saying I do it perfectly, Kat.
Oh, it's
but that's what I'm trying to tell myself every day.
As a person who has a hard time leaving the house on occasion and stuff like that, there's that moment where it's usually when I'm putting on my eyeliner. Somebody else did my eyeliner today, by the way.
Great job.
Thing is, Natalie, she's fantastic. But I have this moment where I have to sort of I have to marshal everything, and I have to maybe listen to some music. I have to do something before I like go out into the world, and that's just like interacting with regular society, and you know, and because I put a fair amount of myself out into the world, people assume that they know like various things, and those
you
things
have
are
a
all
very
real.
signature look.
Yeah, and it's so funny. And the thing is, like, I'm like thousandth, like 100,000th as well known as you are, and I get this, and I can't even imagine.
But
what that
anxiety
must be
is
like.
still anxiety.
Yeah, it really is. And the thing I've learned, and maybe you've learned this too, is to forgive myself for it and be gentle with myself about it. And this last year has been about that. And just be like, okay, you had a bad day. You maybe didn't react how you wanted to or talk to that person how you wanted to. And it's okay. You were just being human.
Isn't it so easy to be hard on ourselves?
So easy. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
God forbid, I'd just be like, you know what? You could have done that a little better.
Like, instead of like, why did you suck so much today?
Right.
Like, that's,
Right.
It's really hard, but like, we have to do it if we're going to keep on doing the thing. And,
Absolutely.
you know, and you are probably going to go, I imagine, do you have a book tour planned for
Full country, U.S., Canada, UK.
the Antoni Porowski
it
petting
is
zoo?
On. Exactly.
Oh my God. What's your plan for taking care of yourself while you do that?
My plan for taking care of myself. I have some like good superficial things that actually
Yeah,
really
what
help.
are those things?
I love my candles.
Oh, do you have like
I
those little
fly,
travel?
so I don't travel with the large ones because those always get weirdly checked as like bombs. So I do the little ones.
Yeah.
And Byredo and Diptyque does little babies
Oh God,
because they have
yes.
such clean scents. And whenever I'm in a hotel, if I light one of those, it makes me feel like I'm at home, and that helps me calm down.
I just started wearing some Byredo on occasion.
Which
and-
one?
Oh my God, it was smoke.
Wait, smoke?
Oh God, yeah, they have a new scent, smoke. It's beautiful.
Stop. I thought Sundays was their more recent one. I have an offensively shocking amount of Byredo products, and I
Oh my
know
gosh.
everything, and I did not know that they created something called smoke, and now I'm going to have to go immediately to the Worcester
It's
store after this and
really,
find it.
I hope I didn't just make that up in my head. I was in New Orleans recently and went to the Sundays shop there.
Oh,
Yeah.
Byredo is so great.
It's so
but I love scents. I love music is really important. and I
Oh
have my
yeah,
little-
well, as we all know from your shirts.
Yes, I love a good band, and so I love having my music with me. It's sort of like, it does set me up like you were mentioning before you leave the house, and it's like kind of like that ritual.
Yeah, I
that-
have a little travel speaker that I
Same. I have a tiny baby one that's good for like outdoors, and then I have one that is like a little larger that I just play in a room. I have to have music.
Yeah.
I can't do silence.
Okay, I have like a noise machine kind of thing too.
Oh, no, I can't. I need music
Yeah.
all the time when I'm outside with my headphones and yeah. But what else do I do for self-care? An important one that I often forget to do is, especially during like long press days, I forget to eat. Yet I think about food all the time.
Right. This is the life of people who work in food media. Like, you'll be sitting at your desk thinking like, why do I feel really woozy? I was like, oh, because I just ate something weird off the free table.
When is the last time you put something solid in your mouth? It's like a
Right.
constant thing that I'm
Right.
asking myself.
Yeah. You need to have like a handler or something like that.
No,
Or
I'm
like-
trying to be independent.
No,
Gina! No, kidding. We're not going to make you do that.
Carry
That's my
jerky with
assistant.
yourself.
Yeah. Oh, I do love a good turkey jerky. But I think, yeah, a constant reminder that like I have to eat a proper meal,
Proper.
drink. It's my word. Water is very important as well
Yeah.
because I drink
Oh.
shocking amounts of coffee.
Yeah.
I'm almost done with mine. I noticed that you didn't take
What's
a single
shocking?
sip.
How much coffee is shocking?
I've calmed it down.
Okay.
But now, typically, so in the morning, I have an iced oat latte. I'm that guy with 4 shots. And then before I leave the house, I'll have another one with a double. So we're at 6 shots. And then in the afternoon, I have 2 more. That's 8. And then if I'm working, I'm going to have 4 more shots. So that's about 12 in a day.
Oof.
And if I'm not, I'll have like a single espresso with dinner.
How do you sleep? Do you?
Melatonin, a bath, and like a good valerian goop bath like soak
Okay.
situation.
Melatonin, valerian. There is a sleep mixture by Jarrow. What is the other one? There's another part of this. There's like one other part of that. Like did I say melatonin?
Oh, it's L-GABA.
L-theanine.
L-theanine.
Yes. Oh, I love that.
I'm all about that shit.
And then actually, I just got a prescription for medical marijuana. So
Oh, good for you.
From the state, yeah. And like
Nice.
it's a CBD THC ratio because my sleep
Nice.
was so bad.
Wow.
Yeah.
8 hours is very important.
I never get that.
Ever?
No, I did this weekend. I stayed up till 6 a.m. watching Marvel movies, and so I slept all day Saturday.
That's a good reason to stay up till
Yeah,
6 in
it
the morning.
really
I
is.
can't go after
Who
you
is-
for that.
Do you watch Marvel movies?
I mean, like Marvel movies in general. I had
Yeah.
all the comics growing
Okay,
up, and so
so
I love the
who's-
films, but I haven't
Who's
seen.
your character?
Oh gosh, look, I love Iron Man.
Because he's got panic attacks.
He has full panic attacks.
Yes. unapologetically.
I love Silver Surfer. I have a very large collection. Spider-Man, more comic. Venom, I was always a huge fan.
Okay.
I went through a phase when I was growing up where I always wanted to be the villain.
Oh.
I always wanted to be the bad guy.
So season 4, can you be?
Yes. I'll start dressing up like Marvel villains in the new season of Queer Eye. That
Would
should be
you
my new
please?
aesthetic.
Like, yes, I think you need
If you
to.
see me wearing one, know that I'll be thinking of you. I'll be dressed as Venom making
Yes,
like
please.
cookies with a little child. It'll go very well with
I
Netflix.
think this is going to work really well. Oh my God. Well, if it's Netflix, I mean, there's no reason you
Yeah,
can't do a cameo
exactly.
on like one of these.
Goodbye band t-shirts.
You'll be on the new Loki show. It's going to be great.
Yes.
I love Loki.
I love Loki too.
Oh my gosh. So she's giving me the signs of how long. So I do have several questions that I ask everybody.
Okay.
But what didn't I ask you that you wish that people would ask you?
What didn't you ask me? We talked about my existential angst.
Oh, yeah.
How I don't know what the hell I'm doing every day, but I'm doing my best.
Yeah.
Our mutual anxiety, how we met, which was kind of like the only thing that I wanted to talk about
There are
today.
going to be links in the description of these videos.
Oh my gosh.
I will put those in there.
Wow, if anyone watches that original video.
And you need to see those videos of Andy Baragani also, because he was there that day,
Right.
as well, and now he's Mr. Superstar on Bon App.
Yes.
His videos are so beautiful. But we
Yeah.
also the first food videos he did were there as well at Tasting
Wow.
Table. Yeah,
That was like a
It's a
nice
breeding ground for
A
stars.
nice breeding ground.
yeah,
Ugh.
yeah.
I'm trying to think if there was anything else. I don't know. I love chatting with you.
I
And I
do
really I
too.
hope I answered the questions. I tend to go off on tangents a lot.
I mean, we are two ADHD people.
Yeah, we're just doing the best we can.
You know what, Anthony? We're doing the best we can.
Yeah.
So I have a question.
Okay.
Okay, so you take care of a lot of people, and like emotionally, and on the show in your life and stuff. What is the selfish thing that you want for you?
The selfish thing that I want for me. Like my dream
Yeah, what's the thing you want?
is to be able to sit. I don't know why it's making me so emotional. The coffee's definitely worn out. Is to be able to sit in a restaurant by myself, not with my phone, and just be perfectly content enjoying a meal with myself.
Can you do that this week? I double dog. I'll do it if you do it.
I literally have goosebumps thinking about it.
Okay, we're gonna pinky swear on this. Yeah.
That means I have to do it.
It means we both. I'm going to New Orleans tomorrow. I'm going to sit in a New Orleans
Oh,
restaurant.
and
without
we
my
have each
phone.
other's cells, so that means we're going to be held
Oh, I
accountable.
don't have your cell.
Yeah, you do.
Do I?
We've texted.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll figure it out. So
Wait, you're going to New Orleans?
tomorrow.
Are you going to go to Café du Monde and just have beignets? Are you?
It's too much of a crowd thing there. I go to Café Beignet.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
But
Yeah.
I will sit by myself at French 75 bar.
Nice.
Which-
You love a French
I
75.
do love French 75.
She loves.
It is a thing I adore. But you and I are
Uh-huh.
both gonna. I'm gonna hold you to it. We're gonna do that this week.
I just got sweaty.
Sorry, I didn't mean to make you.
No,
anxious.
it's fine.
Oh my gosh! And
I
keep-
like fear.
fear's
I'm a
good.
scared person, but I really get off on like leaning into fear.
It's really good,
Because
right?
you can learn so much about yourself through fear.
The gift of fear. It's a beautiful thing.
And it's a feeling. When my therapist asks me how I'm feeling, I always know happy, sad, and I'm trying to explore anger because I have a lot of like hidden anger that I don't deal with.
I really like the Hulk.
and afraid.
Yes.
I never say fear, and I realize that I'm scared a lot.
Oh God, yes.
It's like it's an emotion.
It is a constant state
Mm-hmm.
for me, and I just realized I have to sort of ride side by side with it. Sometimes it has the wheel, and sometimes I do.
Yep.
And it's just trying to change that ratio.
But just addressing it helps too. It's just that awareness of like, oh, this is how I'm feeling. I'm
Yeah.
scared.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the thing is, honestly, like you saying that is a gift. Because if somebody sees you, who they have this avatar of you in their head, and if they hear that you are going through that too, that makes it easier for them.
Right. That'll be something to discuss on a new season. I'll talk about being scared all the time.
Do it. Oh my
Yeah.
God. I think it's a beautiful thing.
We won't push it, but if the right opportunity arises, why not?
Dear Netflix producers.
Yes.
For that. So I keep getting the sign of how many minutes we have left. So I'm
Got
going to
it.
rip through these questions. I could talk to you for like 15 hours
Same.
and do this. What's your comfort food?
A vat of mac and cheese. When it's hot, when it cools down the next morning, straight from the fridge, remove the aluminum foil, dip a fork into it. A vat of mac and cheese.
Okay, and there are recipes that people can have in Antoni in the Kitchen.
Yes, there's one wet and then there's one baked.
I love that. What is the last meal that you had that made you emotional?
The last meal that I had that made me emotional. It's actually in the cookbook. And it was my roasted carrots with a carrot top pesto. And yeah, I got a little teary-eyed because I remember the last time I had it.
And you can share or not share context.
It was at a different time in my life when I was with someone and his family, and we were all having it together, and I really, really missed those days.
Oh, yeah. I hope you can cook that for yourself and feel the joy from it.
Yeah! I'll throw on a crispy egg and make it a whole meal.
Is it in the book?
The carrots are, yeah.
Can imagine that people across the country are going to be making that dish. That's beautiful.
It is beautiful, but like even more importantly, I want people to understand that like we all have those dishes, right? And these are very important and sacred to me, and I want everyone to make them and buy the book. That's all great. But I really want people to be inspired to kind of like look at their own lives and try to think about like their own food memories.
Yeah.
Because we all have those. I don't give a shit if it's a peanut fucking butter and jelly sandwich on an untoasted toast. That's how little I care, because I hate untoasted toast. But like know what that is for you and just think about why it's important and teach other people how to make it, whether it's your kids or your friends or loved ones. And because we all have that, like we all have our own cookbook in our hearts and in our minds.
Moments.
Right.
I just love the thought that somebody's going to take one of your recipes and it's going to become the thing that they make for their loved one. I think that's such a lovely
Stop.
thing. It's true though.
I didn't think about that. That's too big.
Sorry.
That's like the one time that I did shrooms and then I looked at my laptop with my buddy, Tommy, and then we were like, should we open the laptop? And we were like, no, that's too much to take on. We can't do that.
I've just opened up like the Bugs Bunny.
It's too big a world.
Shoot.
Too much to handle.
Okay, I'm going to make you cry again. Last meal that somebody cooked for you in their home. We just go for the jugular in all these.
The last meal that somebody cooked for me in their home. It was a couple of weeks ago, and I was visiting my dad in Vermont. I helped it with like a light rub, but he grilled a rack of lamb, and it was the perfect medium rare. Oh. And he put the fat cap side down on the grill first to get it really nice and crispy. And when we were cutting through it, after I taught him to season a little more aggressively because you have to when there's that much fat, and also to let the meat rest before cutting it. And when he cut through it, and it was just like the perfect medium rare, and I just saw how excited he was. And before we got to the table, he's like, "Eat one," and then I just ate one, and he was just like watching me eat it, and he was just so filled with joy.
Oh God, that's lovely.
Like that's my dad.
Yeah, he must be so proud of you.
He is.
That's really nice.
Yeah.
So this question, okay, this is going to be because you're a music person. This is saying this out to the universe. What musician who you haven't cooked for before would you want to cook for, and what would you cook for them?
That is a good one. Dead or alive?
Oh, sorry, living.
Living.
It has to be living.
Has to be living. That makes more sense.
No, because people ask, and I forgot it's what
right.
Living musician.
Living musician that I would want to. It's so I Is it okay if I've met the person already?
Yeah, but you haven't cooked for them.
I haven't cooked for them. So I recently met almost all the members of the Strokes.
I saw that on Instagram.
After their show, which was like last minute canceled, and I had a high school reunion with my buddies, and we were college reunion with my buddies because we were in a band together called the Silver Spoons, but we were horrible and it was a very pretentious name. But anyway, a few months prior, I befriended Albert Hammond Jr., who's maybe just one of the sweetest people ever, and he has a lovely Polish wife, and they're both big foodies, and they just got a place in LA, and they love to cook. And so we've been like texting a little bit. They were in Italy recently, and we were talking about how much we love to cook together. And
do it.
You know, it's one of those things, like when you meet somebody who you've looked up to for such a long time, sometimes you get disappointed, and then other times it's like You're somehow better than I even imagined.
Oh, we're going to actually met a mutual person we love, Samin Nosrat, was one of those people. I thought she couldn't be more amazing, and then she was.
Yep.
And I think we had invoked you on the podcast, or I don't, something happened.
She is
but then
a heart.
Yes, but then I saw you met up with her, and I was
She
like,
is a heart.
So she is the person who I thought, like, she can't be that, like, as amazing as she seems, and she was.
Oh, she is.
Yeah.
There's like this innocent, childlike curiosity, but also just such a pro. Oh,
and she
I
just
love
got
her.
a puppy.
Oh, yes, I saw this.
And this is just a love fest to Samin.
Yeah.
Okay, final question.
Okay.
You have 5 uninterrupted minutes for self-care. What do you do?
5 uninterrupted minutes for self-care. I will play Maggie Rogers, light on, very low, and I will sit on the edge of my bed with my feet down so that my back is nice and straight in my room with a candle lit, and all I will say, it's my little meditative like mantra, and it's I am enough, I have enough, I am enough, I have enough, and I'll just do that for 5 minutes.
I love that.
The track is like a little shy of 4 minutes, I think, so for the last minute it'll just be silence and me saying it to myself.
I love that. So you and I are both gonna this week. We have a mission.
Yeah,
And
I'm gonna do it.
I'm gonna do it too.
I'm gonna do it, and
Okay.
I will not have my phone. I'm not gonna Instagram story that shit.
Nope.
I'm gonna sit and enjoy a meal by myself.
I will do the same,
Maybe really sad, it may be really great, maybe somewhere in between. We're gonna find out.
but we're gonna do it.
Okay, I'm gonna do it. It's
Again,
gonna
we
happen in Philly, but it'll happen.
We pinky swore.
We did.
So we did that. So thank you so much to our guest today.
Thank
Antoni
you.
Porowski. And people are going to be able to get Antoni in the Kitchen on September 9th.
Yes.
Oh my
And I'll be touring the country, so I would love to meet everybody, and we're going to be making recipes from the book and speaking to really interesting people and doing all kinds of questions and fun, cute little things.
Show up
So-
with Silver Surfer stuff.
Yes.
For Antoni.
Silver Surfer Comics get you VVVIP. That is not an official quote.
But it is.
But it is.
And people can find you on social at Antoni on just about everything.
On Twitter and on Instagram, and I don't go on Facebook, but it does exist.
And sitting in a restaurant near you at some point soon.
Alone.
Leave him be.
Yes.
Oh, thank
Or not, or come say hi. Do whatever. Do what you want.
Do
You're
what
free,
makes you-
free people.
Thank you to our producer, Jennifer Martnick. Thanks to Douglas Wagner for our delightful theme song. If you like what you heard, please tell a friend, write a review, or rate us. Oh my gosh, those reviews, those stars, they let us keep doing this. They let people find us on all of the platforms. And if there is something you would like for us to talk about or a guest you would like to hear from, please let us know. You can find me on Twitter at kittenwithawhip. Find out more about the show and catch up on all the episodes at foodandwine.com and Food and Wine's YouTube page. Thank you for listening, and take great care of yourself till the next time, and go buy the book.